This video, we're going to be looking at ENSA, Enterprise Network Server Administration Theory. We'll also do some practice questions as well to consolidate that. So stay to the end of that video to really make sure you understand the concepts that I'm about to go through. So to start with, we have Active Directory hierarchy and namespaces. So the key concepts here is domain, which is the fundamental administrative boundary in Active Directory. We have a tree, which is a collection of one or more Active Directory domains that share a contiguous DNS namespace and a bidirectional transitive trust relationship. For example, we have adatim.com, which would also have a transitive trust with asia.adatim.com. We have a forest, which is the ultimate security boundary containing one or more domain trees. Trees in a forest share a single schema, a single global catalog, and configuration partition. Even if their DNS namespaces are non-contiguous, for example, adatim.com and contoso.net, they're still in that same forest. So this is just an image to explain it. The overall overarching AD forest is Swin edu, but inside of that you have different trees. Next topic is functional levels, forest versus domain. Rules and mechanics. So functional levels control which advanced Active Directory features are available in a domain or forest. The golden rule is the functional level is restricted by the oldest domain controller operating system in the environment. Server roles matter, so standard members servers or file servers running on older OS versions do not lower or restrict the functional level. Only domain controllers set the limit. In this table, we have the level type, so domain functional level, DFL. It's constrained by the oldest DC operating system in a specific domain, whereas for forest functional level, the oldest DC operating system anywhere in the entire forest is the constraint variable, whereas for the impact, for DFL, enables domain-specific features, fine-grained password policies, whereas with FFL, you enable forest-wide features, for example, AD recycle bin and PAM. So moving on to fine-grained password policies. Password setting object, PSOs, purpose allows setting custom password and account lockout rules for specific users or groups without creating multiple domains. Targeting. PSOs can be linked directly to user objects or global security groups, not operating systems. Precedence and conflict resolution. The attribute MSDS password setting precedence. The rule is that the lower numerical value, it is the higher priority. For example, if the precedence 1, it will override precedence 2. The tiebreaker is if precedent numbers are identical, the PSO with the lower object GUID, alphabetically numerically, wins. Direct assignment. A PSO applied directly to a user account always takes precedence over PSOs inherited from group memberships. FSMO roles, operation master roles. Flexible single master operation, FSMO roles, handle specialized tasks that cannot be safely processed concurrently by multiple DCs. This image illustrates that. So we have the forest-wide roles, exactly one per forest. The schema master controls modifications to the AD schema definition, e.g. adding attributes. We have the domain naming master, which manages the addition or removal of domains and cross-reference partition in the forest. We have domain-wide roles, exactly one per domain. The RIN master, which allocates pools of relative IDs to DCs for creating security principals, users, groups, devices. We have the PDC emulator, handles password changes, time synchronization, authentication fallbacks, and group policy updates. And then we have the infrastructure master, which references objects in other domains, cross-domain object references. They should not run on a global catalog server unless all DCs are GCs. Then we have the Active Directory disaster recovery, restoration types, non-authoritative restore, restores AD database from backup to a DC. Upon reboot, the restored DC receives newer updates from the remaining replication partners via standard USN, update sequence number tracking. Authoritative restore, used when objects were accidentally deleted, corrupted, and replicated across the network, increments the USN of the restored objects so they appear newer than all other copies across the domain, forcing replication outwards to override other DCs. The key takeaway here is that when AD recycle bin is disabled, for example, an authoritative restore using NTDS-util is required to bring back deleted objects without them being immediately deleted by active replication partners. Moving on to topic 6, we have group policy processing and advanced features. So loopback processing mode, standard GPOs apply user settings based on where the user account lives and computer settings based on where the computer lives. Loopback processing forces user settings to apply based on the computer's location, ideal for shared terminals, training labs, or kiosk PCs. Merge mode applies standard user GPOs first, then appends the computer linked user GPOs. If conflicts exist, computer linked GPOs wins. Then we have replace mode, which completely ignores the user's standard GPOs and applies only the computer linked user GPOs. AD site replication and topology. So site terminology, Active Directory site represents a well-connected physical network segment, subnet LAN. Site link, a logical link representing WAN connections between sites. Transitivity, by default, site links are transitive. Site A can talk to site C through site B, for example. Non-transitive links disables automatic pass-through replication, restricting traffic to explicitly defined site paths. We have the site link bridge, explicitly connects non-transitive site links to allow replication between endpoints without direct links. And then we have the bridgehead server, which is a designated DC in a site that handles all inter-site replication traffic on behalf of that site. Think of this analogy. So the Active Directory site is the local freight depot, fast local communication within one location. Site link, railway track, is a scheduled high-cost connection between distant sites. Transitivity, auto-forwarding, data flows automatically across connected sites, ABC. Non-transitive link is a mandatory stop, disables auto-forwarding, data cannot automatically pass through B to get to C. Site link bridge, transfer station, explicitly enables replication between non-transitive endpoints A and C via B. Then we have the bridgehead server, which is the chief dispatcher, the single designated domain controller that manages all inter-site replication traffic for its site. Now moving on to topic 8, which is enterprise high availability and storage management. So the technologies consist of Windows Server failover clustering, ideal for stateful database servers like Microsoft SQL Server, supports always-on availability groups and failover cluster instances. We have NLB, network load balancing, ideal for stateless web application servers, for example, the IIS web front ends. And we have the file server resource manager, FSRM, quota management, limits disk space usage per volume/folder. File screening blocks specific file types, MP3, exe, from being saved. File classification rules, categorizes files automatically based on properties or location. File management expiration tasks, automates moving, archiving, or deleting files based on criteria such as inactivity or creation date. For example, auto-archiving files unaccessed for over 3 years. A little bit more theory before we get to the questions. We're going to touch on Active Directory Security Services, AD, RMS, and PKI. So AD, RMS stands for Rights Management Services. So the right policy template defines user permissions on protected documents, read, print, export. Right account certificate binds a user's identity to an Active Directory RMS to allow accessing protected content. Client license certificate allows users to publish encrypted protected content while working offline. Machine certificate identifies and authenticates specific physical or virtual devices to the RMS cluster. And this is the full PKI components and functions. So the CA, Certificate Authority, issues, signs, and revokes digital certificates. The certificate revocation list is a downloadable list of certificates revoked prior to expiration. Authority information access, pointer in a certificate showing where to locate the issuing CA certificate. Certificate distribution points, network locations, HTTP, LDAP, where clients download CRLs. We have the Online Responder, OCSP, provides real-time certificate status checks without downloading full CRLs. And then we have the NDS, Network Device Enrollment Service, enables network device routers switches to request certificates via SCEP. Finally, the AD infrastructure design and strategy. The best practice methodology for granting access permissions in an Active Directory enterprise domain. A stands for accounts, G stands for global groups, DL stands for domain local groups, and then P is for permission. So how it works altogether is that accounts are placed into global groups representing job roles functions, for example, G academy_staff. Then you have the global groups are added to the domain local groups representing resource access, for example, curriculum folder, read, write. And then finally, the permissions are granted directly on the target source, NTFS share to the domain local group. So now we're going to dive into the practice questions. First one is, how many trees are in the following diagram? So I'll give you a moment to just pause this and have a think. So I'm going to delete this box right now. So the answer is 3 in this case. And the reason that is because the domain is the fundamental administrative boundary in the Active Directory. A tree is a collection of one or more AD domains that share a contiguous DNS namespace and bidirectional transitive trust relationship. And the forest is the ultimate security boundary containing one or more domain trees. Trees in a forest share a single schema, a single global catalog, and configuration partition, even if their DNS namespaces are non-contiguous. So all of this is one tree because it has the ada.tim.com. This is a single tree, and this is a single tree because they have different roots. Next, SwinEDU is a forest of 3 domains. The first domain has a Windows Server 2003 file server and a Windows Server 2008 R2 domain controller. The second domain has a Windows Server 2012 R2 domain controller and a Windows Server 2012 file server. The last domain has a Windows Server 2016 domain controller and a Windows Server 2008 file server. What would be the highest forest functional level you can configure? I'll give you a moment just to pause this or rewind the video to look at the theory. So the correct answer is Windows Server 2008 R2. So the step-by-step explanation is that domain controllers versus member file servers. Active Directory domain and forest functional levels are determined only by the operating system versions running on domain controllers. File servers and member servers, such as Windows Server 2003 file server, have no impact on the functional level. Inventory of the domain controllers in the forest. So based on the prompt, the oldest one was 2008 R2 DC. Setting the highest level, the forest functional level cannot be set higher than the oldest domain controller. So since the lowest DC was server 2008 R2, the highest functional level you can configure for the forest is this one. Next question. A domain has two password settings. A user named Jane is a member of groups gmanager and gaccountants. Gmanager has PSO linked to it, PSO1 rather linked to it, and gaccountant has PSO2 linked to it. You have been asked to ensure that Jane has a password history of 14, which of the following will result in this requirement being met. So I encourage you to pause this video, read through this table first, and then read through this possible answers, and I'll go through it in 3 seconds. So the correct option is to change the precedence of PSO2 to 3. So Jane needs a password history of 14, which is defined as PSO1 MST password length equals to 14. Understand the current conflict. So PSO1 has a precedence of 2, and PSO2 has a precedence of 1. And you can see that right here, precedence. So Active Directory grants priority to the lowest numerical precedence value. Because 1 is lower than 2, PSO2 currently wins. So changing PSO2 precedence to 3 makes PSO2 weaker. As a result, PSO1 now takes priority, ensuring Jane receives the settings from PSO1. Next question. There's maybe 6 or 7 more questions to go. You accidentally delete an important user account. You quickly disconnect your domain controller from the network, but discover that the changes have replicated this error to other DCs. Your DC does not have the recycle bin configured. What should you do to rectify this error? You want to perform an authoritative restore. So Active Directory replication propagates deletions across all DCs via tombstoning. A standard non-authoritative restore will just get overridden again by replication. An authoritative restore increments the USN, updates sequence number of the restored object so that it replicates out to all other DCs, recovering the deleted user across the domain. Next question. Which operations master role must be unique in a domain? The RID master. Also, we have the PDC emulator, infrastructure master is all unique to the domain. Again, what does FSMO stand for? Flexible Single Master Operation, a feature of Microsoft Active Directory that designates specific roles to domain controllers to manage certain tasks and avoid replication conflicts. Each FSMO role can only be assigned to one domain controller at a time, ensuring that critical changes to Active Directory are processed correctly. Now, which operations master role must be unique in a forest? Whoops. I gave you the answer. That was my bad. It's schema master and domain naming master. They must be unique across the forest. So just an analogy to tie this all together. Think of a global franchise, for example, McDonald's. Think of Active Directory Forest as the global corporate enterprise and each domain as the individual store location. So for the forest-wide roles, corporate HQ, this must be unique across the whole enterprise. Schema master is the master recipe book. So corporate HQ maintains one official blueprint for products. If individual stores alter recipes independently, products would become inconsistent globally. So the domain naming master, franchise expansion manager, only one department approves opening new store locations. If 2 stores opened with identical store IDs or names, logistics and routing would collapse. Domain-wide roles, store manager, must be unique within each local store. So the RID master is the ticket dispenser, ensures every order user in that specific store gets a unique receipt number, so no 2 customers share an ID. The PDC emulator is the store clock and shift lead, kept as the central authority for store timekeeping and immediate policy password updates for local employees. And then the infrastructure master is the cross-store transfer coordinator, handles linking local store records when an employee from location A works a shift in location B. So I thought that was a really good example, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well. A few more questions. Zenith are a company that adhere strongly to the principle of least permissions. No user is given permissions or right unless they absolutely need it for their job. A group of retail assistants are being trained on how to use the company's HR software. Whoever performs well in the training is a strong candidate for promotion. However, when they go to install the software on the training PCs, they do not have the required rights. Which of the following would allow the users the right to install software on the training computers while keeping all other security restrictions in place? Have a pause, have a think about it, rewind the video. The answer is loopback processing in replace mode. So group policy loopbacking processing applies computer policy configurations to any user who logs onto that specific machine. Replace mode completely overrides the user's usual GPOs with the computer's GPOs, enabling the retail assistants to install software on the training PCs while maintaining strict limits everywhere else. This one, Pinnacle is a company based in 4 sites. Each site is linked to at least one other site with a dedicated wireless area network link. In Active Directory, these WAN links are represented using manual non-transitive site links. For example, these lightning symbols. Generally, all branches sites only need to replicate with the headquarters site. However, recently, a need has arisen to replicate between Sydney and Dallas in order to speed up sharing of resources between these sites. Which of the following best achieve this? Pause the video and have a look. The answer is configure a site link directly between Sydney and Dallas. So non-transitive site links prevent automatic routing through intermediate sites. Creating a direct site link between Sydney and Dallas created a dedicated replication route between these 2 sites without relying on transit through HQ. Last 2 questions. Which high availability technology would best be used for Microsoft SQL Server? Sorry, have a read of these. So the answer is failover clustering. Always on availability group, WSFC. Windows Server failover clustering provides database level high availability, seamless automatic failover, and zero data loss for Microsoft SQL Server workloads. If you're curious on what all the other ones do, so failover clustering, like we said, high availability for database stateful apps, SQL, Hyper-V, automatic takeover, zero data loss. AD/DFS, file management, single path domain share for scattered file shares plus efficient cross-site syncing. DNS round robin, basic distribution, simple free traffic rotation across IPs, no health checks. We have NLB, scalability for web stateless apps, IIS, evenly distributes web traffic and bypasses dead web servers. And then we have ADFS, which is a single sign-on SSO, securely logs users into external cloud apps without sending passwords outside the network. One or two questions. So AD-RMS is an information protection technology that is designed to minimize the possibility of data leakage. By using AD-RMS certificates, licenses to ensure the proper authority, fill in the gaps. So something determines applied rights on protected content, something enables a user to access protected content, client licensor something, and machine certificate. This is a tough one. You're supposed to have the drop downs. If you can, just have a think about it. Otherwise, I'm going to reveal it right now. So the first answer is rights policy template determines applied rights on protected content. The next one is rights account certificate enables a user to access protected content. The client licensor certificate allows users to publish protected content while offline. And machine certificate identifies and validates the physical computer device running AD/RMS. Final two questions. PKI is a combination of software encryption technologies, processes, and services that assist an organization with securing its communication and business tractions. Many components must work together to provide complete PKI solutions. Match each of them with the best described functions. It's kind of tough as well, because once you know the dropdowns, you'll be able to identify it easier. But if you can remember them from what I touched on maybe 10 minutes ago, that's really impressive. Otherwise, I'm going to go through it right now. So this is all here. I'm not going to read out again, but you can just pause the video if you want to have a read through it. Final question. In order to keep data at a manageable level, the CIO has asked that all customer files that have not been accessed for 3 or more years be centralized to one folder, then periodically backed up to external storage and then deleted from the server. This process should be ongoing, so that if a file has not been accessed for 3 years, it will be centralized. Which of the following technologies would best help achieve this? And the answer is file exploration task. It's been bolded as well, so that's my mistake there. Concept file server resource manager, file management task, specifically the file exploration task, allow automated moving of files that meet criteria, for example, lost access more than 3 years ago, to an archive folder for backup and removal. That's all the content I wanted to go through today with you guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next video.